call the meeting to order, please. And Mr. Pedro, would you like to say the prayer this evening?
Yes, I would. Loving God, as we come together tonight for the city of Waterville, we pause to ask that you be with us and guide our way. May your spirit of peace surround all we say and do this evening. We ask for your strength to do what is best for the good of Waterville. Lord God, as servants of your people, we pray that you grant us a share of your wisdom. Amen.
Please rise. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mrs. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mayor Brody?
Here.
Mr. Rosick?
Here.
Mr. Pedro?
Here.
Mrs. Johnson?
Here. Thank you. Next, we have our approval of minutes from our regular council meeting, which was February 11th, 2019. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I have citizens' comments. I do not have any up here. Do I have any in the audience? Alright. We'll move on to staff reports. First, we have our administrator, Mr. Gokenauer.
I have nothing to add to my report that isn't agenda specific.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other items? Next, we have our law director.
Breaking with tradition, unfortunately, I have a small report. Number one, I received from John Burrell, the Lucas County prosecutor, today a proposed agreement between Waterville and the commissioners for the Suburban Courts Services Program. We've done this every year. It amounts to $5,000 to provide a victim advocate in Maumee Court for our cases, domestic violence, and other things. And I'm going to leave this with John. Just wanted you to know it was here. We can take action next meeting, because that will take an ordinance. The other thing I dropped off with everybody is a conflict letter from me to the various governmental bodies involved with our new Union Cemetery District. They have asked me to be the attorney. I told them I didn't have a problem with that. But obviously, having represented Waterville for 12 or 13 years, you are my number one client, and you also have a representative as a trustee on the district board, but so does the Village of White House, and so does Waterville Township. That being said, doing work for the board could create potential conflicts, and they've gotten a little picky these days, and then my malpractice carrier says I need to have a letter saying, you understand I might have a conflict at some point in time. I'm certainly going to advise you of that. I would probably end up being a witness to anything that happened if the parties got in a disagreement. But I have the letter there, and that could be approved by motion. As long as it is signed, I will get it on, or I should say John's going to drop it off at the Township Hall for their next meeting on the 25th. And then once everybody's agreed, I'll send a copy to my malpractice carrier and undertake the job of representing the cemetery district as well. Quite frankly, I don't see too many conflicts. We're going to do our best to take care of people, keep the cemetery maintained, open up closed graves, and take care of families in a time of need. But something could come up, and because of that eventuality, I guess I have to do these things now.
So would you like a motion this
I
evening?
would.
All right, I will move that we approve this, shall we call it conflicts of interest?
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right, any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All righty.
Well, thank you. I feel conflicted, but better.
Yes, well, hopefully it'll be limited there.
Yes.
Next, we have our report from our finance director.
Yes. Council has a copy of the fourth quarter budget and financial report from January, covers January through December of 2018. We did present this to the Finance Committee, and they reviewed it and approved it. We ended the year with a overall fund balance of $5,795,877. All of our 18 individual funds are positive. We ended the year with positive balances. The cash fund and bank report, the general fund ended the year with a balance of $1,654,036, which was about $288,000 more than our beginning balance for 2018. Every year we do carryover purchase orders, encumbrances that were encumbered in 2018 and we have to pay in 2019, and we have about $80,000 in encumbrances from 2018 to reappropriate in 2019. When we go out for our note issue in May, we do try to keep a strong general fund balance of 2 to 3 months average expenditure, which we've done for 2018. Going into our general fund, our revenue had a pretty good year there. As you can see, the property taxes came in at budget. The income tax, of course, is pretty close to budget. We have been noticing a slight downturn in our construction activity. We've issued some fewer zoning permits in the last couple of years, so the revenue was off there, as were other permits, which would be like driveway openings, final plats, things like that are also development related. Local government revenue from the county was at 104%, and we didn't receive any local government revenue from the state. EMS budgeting, our revenue was about 13% under budget. Investments did moderately well there. Charges for services, which is plan review, which again is development related, we ended the year about 41% under budget. Our rental income was down a little bit because we did sell some property that we used to farm. The reader retainer fee was under budget a little bit by about 14%. Refuse fee was over budget, and then overall the general fund, we were off budget by $92,841, which was 2.28%. General fund expenditures, we had expenses which were 87% of budget, and we did have approximately $532,247 that was unspent at the end of 2018, and as I mentioned, we have about $80,000 in carryovers in the general fund that we have to reappropriate. Our dedicated funds, which are dedicated for specific purposes, usually in terms of revenue and expense, those come in about 100%, and our expenses are pretty close to 100% there. Permissive tax, I don't know if you've noticed that the governor is thinking about raising the gas tax. That fund, ironically, was a little under in terms of revenue this year. And then the Parks and Green Space was primarily a little bit less due to our unspent capital improvement expenses. 5-year capital budget revenues were at 98%. Expenses, 87%, and as you all know, we do have a couple projects that are lingering from last year that we're finishing up. So we do have $192,184 in encumbrances for those projects. And then in terms of our enterprise funds, our water and sewer funds came in pretty much as we expected in 2018. Again, the water capital, which is our water capital improvement expenses, were lower than we thought due to uncompleted capital improvements. Overall, the city collected $10,952,270, and we had expenses of $9,946,554. We also had some. We also have our reader reports, and I did include December through February. I believe I mentioned at the last meeting, we did have our income tax, our RETA income tax came in at $3,431,459. we were at about 98.95% of our estimated income tax revenue that we collected. And I did mention that we did have about $18,000 in state collected revenue, income tax revenue, which, you know, put that figure at about one half of 1% in terms of revenue that we didn't collect. January is always kind of a surprise with Rita. A lot of times there isn't a pattern to what they pay us in January. We did receive $248,776, which was about $72,000 less than we got in 2018. Looking at the cash period for January, it's fairly obvious where that decline is. It's in the net profit tax that was submitted to the city. We received about $15,000 this year, and last year in January we got $71,000. So that probably accounts for that variation there. February, Rita, we had $316,821, and of course that was $61,000 more than we got in February of last year. So again,
Trend.
a great trend developing there. For February, we're at about 16% of our budgeted revenue for 2019.
Thank you. Any questions on the finance report from last year?
Is that the whole February collection, then, John?
Yes, it is, yes.
All right. We'll move on to the treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I will keep this very brief because Mr. Gokenauer did a pretty good job of going through all of December stuff, so I won't rehash a lot of that. But once again, we do have December wrapped up, and as Mr. Gokenauer mentioned, total balances are around $5,800,000 as of December. If you look at the bottom left of the big chart here, again, you can see in December of 17 we're at about 4.8. We're at about 5.8 December of 18, so that's a very nice increase, nice trend. And if you look at the 2018 column there, you will see, as I've mentioned before, we usually peak out in the summer and then we start paying for all of our projects as we go. So you will see in November we went down about $300,000. Two primary reasons. Number one, we paid about $170,000 on the water treatment plant notes that we owed. And then we also had about $150,000 payment for the ambulance. So those are the two primary reasons for the big $300,000 decrease for the month. So, but otherwise, the year ended good, as Mr. Gokenauer mentioned. General fund about $1.6 million, which is very healthy for the audit and for our potential future notes. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Communications from council. Start with Mr. Bruno.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Mrs. Bruno.
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Fry.
No report this evening.
Mr. Rosie.
Same for me, Your Honor, thanks.
Mr. Pedro.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Seriously?
I
I'm
always
sorry.
get it.
Just kidding. Mrs. Duncan.
No report this evening, Your Honor.
Kind of miss a report there. Okay, next we'll move to old business. We have a couple items. Resolution 60-18 is a resolution approving and adopting the City of Waterville FY 2019 5-year capital planning program for all municipal funds and departments. We had a lengthy total discussion on the whole budget and capital in particular. And if you remember, 2 weeks ago, council asked for some reprioritizing of some items. So probably many of you brought your initial budget of capital and then the revised section. Everything else was the same in the initial one except this one. Today, the email you received in the afternoon, and then there should have been a copy at your desk. We did revise. The chief and I met and our administrator, and we went through some of the items that we had talked about moving up and some of the reasons. And when we finished, the changes you can see are outlined there, and we can see if anybody has any questions about that. But on the attachments, We were looking at addressing some concerns of council, different questions that came up about the capital budget, as we spent a lot of time on it last meeting, particularly for the fire department. And we had a revision here, which helps us with a lot of the concerns. Hopefully hashing some of that out before we got here as well, just so we could all take a look at it together. The main changes were as follows. The cardiac monitors were 2, and we went to 1 in this year, 2019, and 1 in the following year. And then on the gear was something new, which came from the movement of a couple other items that you had, the money set aside for a potential fire truck in a future year. It was about $100,000. So that expenditure we worked on, and we decided that phasing that in would allow us to get almost a third of the set of gear they were looking at for a few different reasons. So that's the 87 to the 24,085. Then at the time though, in the notes that we did receive from our interim chief, he needed 2 extra helmets, which we put in there this year as well, and the 2 additional pairs of boots. And he looked at the fire hose, and this was kind of a work in progress to figure out, had both of those items as important. And there are 2 types of hose, if you remember, and he chose that one that was $29.25 to get this year, and move the other one to 2020, and use that difference in money to increase the turnout gear that we would start to buy. Then also, if you're following along, let's see what else is in here. These were felt, and mostly one of the main reasons that people need to understand within the fire department and the city is the reductions are felt practical because the ongoing fire district study, which we continually talk about, and I have some good news. Mr. Bagdonis, who we have working for us, who just retired on this project, he spoke with our consultant today who did the study, and they will have the recommendation portion finished in approximately 2 weeks. So we will be able to get that. What you saw so far was just the part of the study where they were info gathering and getting all the information. This will be the part for all of us to see for all the entities. So that is going to be a great next step for us, and that was the initial reason we were hoping to kind of put a hold on the fire and a lot of large purchases in 2019. That does not mean, and I'll reiterate for everyone, for those at home and for those here, that does not mean that we will not move something around if we need that within the fire department. We will always put safety first, and these items are very important. A very good thing came out of working with our interim chief. He's done a very good job at getting facts. I have other information I'm sharing with council just about runs and questions that council have so they can understand what the department does and how that history has gone. But what I will say is, as we started talking, our interim chief is already looking out ahead to things that actually have expiration dates. I'll give you an example of oxygen that firefighters wear. He said in 2029, you can only recertify those 3 times for 10 years. So an example for you is we need to start planning now for 2029, not buy all 18 of them in the same year. So we are on the right track. We have someone helping that's doing a lot of research for us, and our interim chief and our new administrator. So I thought this was a very nice way to bring in what we need and start to reprioritize the items that are for safety, that help the residents, that get them in the right order. So we spent a lot of time today, and I thank Mr. Gokenauer and Interim Chief Meyer because they spent a lot of time on this. With that said, we have all that going on. So these revisions that you were given, and hopefully everybody took a look at them, these would go into effect if we pass the capital and the operating for 2019. You can see below where most of the other items were moved to 2020 and 2021, I believe. So as always, the 5-year is a moving document, just like a comprehensive plan. Things can change. If anything's needed, that would obviously be brought to us, and things can be moved up. But the next budgeting cycle starts for the 5-year plan in September. He'll start about August, actually, and hit up his department heads to start putting their list together. What I'm hoping by then, our chiefs are very busy now, but that they'll start to be able to find those items that they can even forecast out a little further for the council and for the city. So anyway, I'm very pleased and happy that we could work together and figure out how to bring these items in because they are very costly. If you'll note, the original budget for 2019 just in this one department was $255,000. It's a pretty big nut to crack for a small city. So I think we found a way that we can start chipping away at what we need. And that is my summary. And if I forgot anything, Mr. Gokenauer, you can hop in there. So questions or comments, and we do not have to only talk about the fire department. This is to pass the entire capital. That department just happened to have probably the most items along with Public Works in it. But tonight, I will remind everybody that in our charter, we have until March 1st. If we don't pass it by then we keep going. But tonight is our last meeting before that. So if we pass this capital, that would go into effect, and then we usually pass the operating at the same time. But I would entertain any further questions on the capital before we get to the operating.
I had a couple, I don't want to,
Sure.
I'll
Sure.
just jump right in,
Yeah,
I guess.
jump in.
I wonder what the effect on these changes had on the 2020 and 2021 budgets, if that, I know you showed the box has the movement, but then was anything in 2020 or 2021 that was on the original budget? Were there any changes in what was on that budget?
Well, we're reducing the overall expenditure, so we pre-funded everything, and so I think from a financial perspective, we're okay. One of the things that we talked about today is the reprioritizing of the capital budget, and I think what you'll see in the future are, a yearly allowance for turnout gear, fire hose, things like that, and the interim chief is going to basically look at the outline years in the 5-year capital and, make sure that we're going to be phasing in these expenditures over time and not buying everything at once. And so we're really going to be re-examining the remaining years. But if you notice in the 5-year capital in the later years, there was, for example, in 2020, there was firefighting gear, $7,000, hose replacement, $12,000. So those were, in the later years in the budget, but in the later years, painting the fire station, and I know we talked quite a bit about the vehicles for the chief and the deputy chief, and so those are things that we want to take a look at and reprioritize in terms of getting up to date and up to speed on all the things that have an expiration date, like hose and turnout gear and helmets and things like that, and make sure that every year that those are prioritized. And as the police chief has done with the vehicles, there might be a year where we don't buy police cars, and I could see that as well with the fire department, is once we're up to speed on those items that we have to replace on a regular basis, there might be a year where we don't buy hose or we don't buy turnout gear, but that's the plan for the remaining 4 years of the 5-year capital.
I do think, answering your question though, moving those items you saw into the 2 different years below, it would definitely change the totals, leaving the other items that are already there. You're right, it will change that, which we can make those changes for sure. I mean, that would be amending it as is, moving mainly these 3 items. The vehicle,
But I think in terms of the financial part of it,
yeah,
it's been pre-funded, and
right.
the pumper was supposed to be a $100,000 payment towards that, which was pre-funded when you approved the budget last year, and we made transfers into the capital fund from the general fund to cover the shortage of the earlier pre-funding years. So I think we're still funded. It's just where do you want these to be, and next year, yeah, I guess if council decides to 2020, you decide to buy the pumper, and it's $500,000.
Yeah, we're not really pre-funding at this point, the 100,000. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, you'd have to make that up in next year. Yeah.
It's
Right. The other question, if I
listed in
may,
there.
and just to make sure that
in there.
we're covering the safety on the fire hoses and the gear. Doug indicated we needed 330. Turnout gear, 30 sets. So I guess I don't want to be short. If we have a catastrophe, you want to make sure the hoses aren't leaking and there's enough gear for all the firefighters.
Well, we currently have gear. We have over 30 now, and they're not all.
They're not all bad.
No, and I guess what I'm saying is we also never have 30 people show up at the
Right.
same time,
Yeah.
and we aren't privileged like full-time fire departments to have people with their own standard gear, unfortunately, because we have volunteers and part-timers, and they come and go, the nature of a part-time fire station. Hence, we're looking at the district. So it's not as though we take what we have and we get rid of it. That's why we're phasing in what we need.
Right.
So we discussed it, and he also felt the hose, that he'd rather have that difference of 10 to 11,000 to buy additional that way. And we went over last time the hose was a issue, and he felt comfortable with those choices. And we do have hose on all the apparatus, and yeah,
It's all
I mean,
good.
that remains the same,
Okay.
Good.
All right.
but at least phasing it in. But you have a good point. I mean, everything will move, so shift that in your brain where it was there.
Right.
But I'm thinking what John's telling you, the money's the same, but you may see some changes. There's a couple I guess I can't say yet, but, you know, there are grants and potential, and they're always looking for that, and we might even be able to look for more, not just in fire, you know, and have people that are good at doing that. But there are some items that may shift around, but I do still think council will do themselves a favor when the staff starts budgeting in the fall, that hopefully you'll know a lot more information if things will be changing. I mean, if you'll be going into a district or not. And I guess one of my takes on that is, it'd be nice to go with what you have, because when people are buying very large things right now and you're trying to go in, you know what I mean? You're gonna take what you have so far and try to meld it all together, so.
Yeah.
I think taking a little time, if it's not too big of an issue, or 6 months, it's not a huge deal, or 9 or 10. But we have, you know, we talked about it, and as you know, this happens anyway. Occasionally, it hasn't happened much in my 16 years, but something will pop up that has to go before something
sure.
else, so.
Right.
Yeah. Any others on any other department too? I don't wanna think we always talk about fire, but.
Mayor, just that you
Yeah.
commented already, but I think in general, we did talk this morning and over the weekend, there are several grants out there that become available. I mean, not just fire, but I know Doug's already looked into some of it. I know Pat did that when he was on board. So I'm just saying in general, there are funding sources out there, and it just behooves us on council to keep an eye on that, and staff to look at it, because there's funds out there.
And the list that you received, Tim, do we get that here at the city, or is that something you get outside?
I get that through my work, but I would gladly pass it on. They, you
It's
can,
about 26 pages of
Yeah, there's
various
a lot.
grants, so. I sent a
That's-
couple to Ken Blair, he's probably happy. I
Good.
sent about parks, we have some lighting we need, yeah, there are quite a few in there. So anything like that's very appreciative. Other questions on any of these items? I know we talked about a few other areas, I don't know if everybody had their questions answered.
I just wanted to, talk about, let's see, on page 36, the Prairie Trail Park Master Plan. We were gonna start pre-funding. There was some confusion in how this was brought about, at $15,000. But I would like to, recommend that we just remove that for now, and I'll take that back to Parks and Rec. And it seems like all of our focus and attention and resources needs to be put down at our developing park down on the river, and not to spread ourselves out too thin. And so we'll just, wait to see how the city develops over there on the west side of Waterville. So that would be a recommendation I would have for council.
All right. Others? Comments on that? And you are on that Parks and Rec? Okay, follow up with them. All right, if there aren't any other comments or questions, we could pass the resolution that adopts the 5-year.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? Last chance. Had enough of it? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 27-18, which is an ordinance adopting the annual appropriations for the municipality of Waterville for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, and repealing ordinance number 28-18, declaring an emergency. First reading was scheduled for December 10th. Second reading and public hearing scheduled for January 14th. Third reading and legislative action was scheduled for January 28th of 2019. Again, we went through this in detail. On the operating side, is there any new information or comments or questions? Make sure you have your latest copy revised January 28th. And the revised copy, remind me, would be with the revisions. Do we need to say that in it? You gave us the two options at the end of January.
Right, I guess
Which
I would,
were-
I would say if you're approving the revision of a 1/28,
Okay.
29,
Okay.
with the increase for paving and debt reduction.
Okay.
Any leftovers, put it in paving, please.
No. All right. Questions, comments?
You don't need a separate, we didn't do the changes to the capital budget separately. Do we need to do something separate here?
No, I think if you're comfortable with the revisions to the, for the paving, we'll change the capital budget to reflect that.
Okay.
Oh, did you need that on this one?
I can make another motion on the capital if you want.
Let's do that. Cover it with the
Make
revision.
another motion to,
Yes,
okay.
as amended.
Go
as amended.
backwards. All right.
So for the capital budget, I would move to approve it as amended based on the revised budget for the fire department and the, I think we changed paving
And,
and rails.
and the Parks and Rec,
Oh, and Parks and Rec as,
Budget for the fire department, I'm sorry,
paving,
paving, and
Parks and Rec. And we had a second of,
Second.
is that Mary, whoever? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, keep our ducks in a row. Okay, so for this operating budget for 2019, it would be with the revisions we were given on 1/28/2019 with the paving and the debt repayment. So we'd need a motion on that.
So moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, or
Aye.
wait, roll call, sorry.
Mayor Brody,
Let's back up one more time, guys. We have to suspend that, we have to do it emergency, so it'll take effect. So I'll move the rules be suspended to allow for the passage of ordinance number 27-18 as an emergency measure.
Second?
Okay, roll call, please.
who seconded, I'm sorry?
Tim, Pedro.
Mayor Brody,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Pedro,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Rozak.
Yes.
All right, now I will move for final passage of ordinance number 27-18, first and final reading as an emergency measure.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rozak,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Pedro,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mayor Brody.
Yes. Thank you for passing the budget. Thank you for your hard work to the staff and administration.
So we can keep operating now, John? Is that
Yep.
what happened?
He was a little worried.
Is the
Yeah.
government open?
We were gonna have a local one.
Gotta do it. I
All right.
can only live for one paycheck.
We're moving on to old business. Item C is a public hearing ordinance 02-19, ordinance amending the municipal zoning map of the city of Waterville to change the zoning classification of a certain parcel of land known as 7115 Waterville Monclova Road from A1 agricultural to R1 residence district. First reading was January 28th, our second reading scheduled for February 11th, our third reading and public hearing and legislative action is February 25th this evening. So we'll open the public hearing. Mr. Gokenauer, I know we have some representatives here, and do you have any information on that to add?
The planning commission recommended approval of the zoning request, and in the future, there'll be a site plan and a special use permit, but that's still at the planning commission level, and when that is advanced from the planning commission, it'll come to council for your consideration and approval.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or from any of our people attending comments? Seeing none, we can close the public hearing. Then we'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rozak,
Yes.
Mayor Brody,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Pedro,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have new business. We have ordinance 03-19, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Waterville by granting a conditional special use permit to allow a residential use on a parcel zoned C2 Commercial District located at 11 North River Road First reading is this evening, February 25th. Our second reading is scheduled for March 11th. Our third reading, public hearing, and legislative action is scheduled for March 25th. And Mr. Gokenhour, do you have an update on this?
This request took many forms, but they originally there were 2 zoning change requests, and they modified their request each time, and they settled on a conditional use special use permit for this property. It's a non-conforming residential structure, and it happens to be in a commercially zoned area, and the non-conforming use it wasn't used for a period of more than 2 years, so they lost their non-conforming status, and so they came to the Planning Commission with their conditional use to allow a residential use in this former residential structure in a commercially zoned area, and the Planning Commission did recommend by a 5-0 vote that it recommended approval at their February 4th meeting. There's also a lot split request that's a part of this that the Planning Commission also approved, which makes the Historical Society's 2 lots legal conforming lots.
So this basically allows residential, it's a 1-story, so it's
Right.
in the whole house.
It would allow a residential use for this former residential structure in a commercial area, and it's subject to council and the Planning Commission's approval. If something was changed, they would have to come in and get approval for that. Kind of like Story Point, when they did the changes, they had to come back in and get approval by the Planning Commission and council.
Okay.
John, is it, oh, sorry, Mary.
No, go ahead.
I was a little confused with the letter from their council, whether it was gonna be single family or 2-family, because he talked about residents on the second floor and then, residential purposes on the first floor. So is it 1-family?
It was approved for a single-family use. He mentioned that because there is language in the code that specifies that in other areas of the downtown commercial district, you can only have residences on the top floor, and they were requesting a single-family use for the upper and lower floors of the property, and that's why he put it in that language.
And then the lot split, I don't know how accurate the sketch is, but it looks like the lot line is right on the building. Am I looking at that
It
correctly?
is, but because it's commercial, it complies because there is basically a 0 lot line
Zero lot
without
line.
setbacks,
Okay.
yeah. Most of the structures are older and they used to have shared walls, et cetera, in a downtown of historic nature.
And the parking will be on the street then, do you think?
Yes,
Yes.
they could, in theory, come in and ask to build a garage and have some parking off the alley, but that's another day.
All right, so that is our first reading. Are there any other questions, Mrs. Duncan?
John asked it.
All right. Next, we have an executive session, a conference with the law director, Ohio Revised Code 121.22G2's purchase or sale of property for public purposes and consideration of a personnel issue, Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1, appointment and compensation of public employees or officials. And we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mayor Doty,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Pedro,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Rosey.
Yes.
Thank you. There'll be no further business conducted after our executive session. That doesn't count for anything, right? So, that's just a thing you do. Yeah, that's just. I guess we're meeting out here, so we gotta. I signed mine. I
We
started
just need you.
So does everybody else have to leave?
colored pen, but sorry.
They're all leaving,
Is
right?
that